to go over and how you do from the syllabus. So if you can just grab that and have it out, and we won't talk a lot about it, it won't take much time, but I do want to make sure that we cover all the ground. Okay, so I believe we went through everything. Has anyone had any problems getting onto MindTap? MindTap good? Thumbs up, okay. Thumbs up, I don't, some of you, okay. There's about 3/4 of you that are not doing this, so I'm assuming that maybe it's okay, you just don't feel like doing the thumb thing. If you don't have, you got on and you paid, registered, or even if you haven't registered, right, because you're waiting for the grace period, okay, that's fine. So I just want to make sure everyone's on. I had a couple people email about Bryn. So Bryn, of course, was the person, excuse me, the person here on Tuesday who is the representative for Cengage on campus. Okay, so some of you didn't write down her information. I'm going to just write, including myself. So I didn't write down, I just have her email. So that's the first step. If you aren't sure about something on Cengage or MindTap, and believe me, there will be more questions as we progress through the semester regarding the technical aspect or some of the concepts, it's just the format in general. So she needs to be your contact first, because if you send it to me or send it to Ryan, we'll probably say, meh, because we don't want to give you any of the wrong information. That's not our thing. She's here directly from Cengage. So email her first, and then you should get everything straightened out, okay? Because it's just kind of a time situation where we're going back and forth, and we're sending emails back to her, back to us, back to you. So anyway, if you don't have her information, I actually just have her email. So BK Becker at ASU. Okay. Okay. And you'll have to excuse me. I actually have like a crown on the back of my tooth, and I bit into some candy, and it's like pointed really sharp into my tongue. So if I stop talking, it's because I have some pain going on in my mouth. So just if I have to pause or something, it's why. Okay, so I think we covered a lot of stuff. I think it was the very end that where we needed to kind of finish up discussing. We did talk about attendance. I think we talked about everything except there's one thing that I want to go over again, is just the basic format of the class, which would be on the schedule. So I think it's really easy to read. Everything is really important as far as what you need to turn in. The stuff is graded, the stuff is worth lots of points, is in bold. If you aren't sure of what that is, of course you can ask us again. It's all explained in the syllabus as detailed as possible, but again, we're here for any clarification on any of this, okay? So we just have, the first test isn't until Valentine's Day. So we have a little while, right? But anytime we say, well, it's not until this time, it goes super fast. So, you know how last semester went really fast? I'm guessing it did for you. Same thing this semester, right? So time just kind of flies by. And a reminder that everything that we learn starting today, the concepts that we learn, we're going to learn some terminology, is going to be carried on till the end of the semester. In fact, if I don't use the terminology every day that we're learning today, to the end of the semester, I will be really surprised. So chapter 1 is a really important chapter, focusing on just the foundational stuff, some of the basic stuff that as we move through is not going to become so basic. There's going to be more complexity that we're going to apply to some of the terminology today. All right, so that's super important, and I just want to keep reiterating that. It's not just terminology and definitions. It's going to be applied a lot throughout for the next 3 months, okay? Okay, so we talked about the student resources, some study skills. I think that's kind of where we left off. So somebody mentioned on Tuesday that that's kind of a, sort of a concern is the time management part of being in college. It was for me as well. I remember my freshman year, my sophomore year so well because of that. All of a sudden we're not in high school and we're not, kind of on the schedule, and we don't have our parents, like right there telling us kind of where to go and what to do. We're in a different context completely where we're just floating around on our own. Add that to the fact that there's 80,000 people on this campus. So, so you're really on your own. And so it's the time management thing, right? So study skills goes along with that. You start studying well before the test, okay? So have you guys heard of Ebbinghouse's forgetting curve? Anybody? Kinda? Sounds familiar? Okay, you may have learned about it in Sec 101, but essentially it says that as we so you learn something, say learn something today, and then you're going to lose some percentage of that information by tomorrow, by the next day, and it continues to decrease as far as you're forgetting, okay? Then by the end of a month, you're from 100% right now, when you learn it, down to 20% or less, okay? Unless you look at something like a couple times a week, you take 10 minutes a couple times a week to just review your notes, then you're up to 90%, okay? So if we can apply that to not just this class, but every class, it doesn't take a lot of time, okay? Maybe you don't love statistics, maybe you'd rather do a lot, like 12 other things besides look at your stats notes for 10 minutes, but in the end, it really will benefit you. Okay, because when we cram, our brains literally cannot contain all of that information for an entire test. Okay, has anyone had any experience cramming? Okay, cramming experience. Okay, I have, looks like 3 of you have, but I know that some of you are not raising your hand for reasons, certain reasons. So when you're cramming, okay, all the stuff is going in your short-term memory. Your short-term memory lasts 30 seconds. Okay, so you're sitting outside, you're standing outside, kind of pacing. You're in the classroom, going and trying to get as much info into your short-term memory as possible. 7-ish items can stay for 30 seconds in your short-term memory. So you're pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. So by the time you get your test, okay, all you got is the stuff that the capacity of your short-term memory, so you just throw that onto the test as soon as you can, so it relieves that cognitive load, okay? So if you've crammed, has anyone had that experience where the teacher hands you the test, and right away you go to the questions that you know because they're right here in the present moment, okay? But then the rest is like, I don't know. And that's what happens when we cram. We just can't fit everything into our brains, okay? So that's my little talk about spacing out studying or looking at your notes, okay? You don't need to analyze and talk about and form groups and discuss for 10 minutes every 2 days during the week, but really just kind of go over it. Okay? The terminology, that's all you need to do. Okay? keeping your brain in that stats space a little bit, okay? All right, that's a big one. Okay, and we'll go through everything. Obviously, a lot of people find flashcards helpful, to find working with somebody else helpful. What's the best way to learn? When you're teaching somebody else, okay? So if you have a study buddy, you are inevitably going to be giving feedback or correcting or asking questions or giving more information that someone else may have or may not have, and back and forth, and that's teaching. Okay, so it's one thing to be able to memorize stuff, write it on a piece of paper. It's a completely different cognitive mechanism to be able to talk about it and teach people as if they have no idea. So think about teaching like your grandma. Okay, assuming your grandma is not a statistician, think about how would you sit down and tell your grandma about all of the stuff you're learning. Okay. So speaking of study buddies, so this is a big class, and you guys are all in rows like little robots. Okay.
I get it. Robots.
Robots.
Is there in rows?
Yes. Okay. And I meant that pun, and you got it, right? And purposely, I thought about it last night, got to think about pun. Okay, so you guys are little robots, little AI people, whatever, and you are gonna not even recognize people in this class after being in class for 3 to 4 months. That is not cool. Your psychology majors, you guys know about context effects and collaborative effects and group work and all of those things that will increase, okay, your success and performance in the class. All right. So with that said, you see on the very back page, there's just 4 lines. Okay. So what I'd like you to do, all right, now this before you do it. What I'd like you to do is find at least one other person, maybe 3 other people, maybe 4, but 4 in a group would be great. So just people around you, don't make it too complicated, and I'd like you to introduce yourselves and get the information down, like email, phone number, that kind of thing, so that if you have to be gone, you have someone to get notes from, okay? If you are gone and say I have to change a date or change my office hours, you will know that, okay? So these little things that you miss when you're gone, someone else can pick up for you, okay? I wouldn't rely on that person only, okay, to take notes for you. We all take notes differently, and maybe their note-taking is not great. So, but those times when you're gone, when you need a study, okay, it's good to get together, teach each other, get feedback. That's one of the best ways, okay? So, I think also just to have an ally in class, okay? That's kind of a nice feeling that even if you have one other person that you can rely on, then it's kind of cool. So I'm going to have you get into groups first thing. Do you guys remember, you've heard of that book, Everything You Need to Know in Life You Learned in Kindergarten? Do you guys remember that or know of that? Okay, that was a famous book years and years ago, and it gives you all these, things that you learn in kindergarten that you should still apply to your life through your adulthood. So one of those things is, when you meet somebody, you make eye contact and you smile, and you treat people with respect, and you don't hit people, okay, things like that. Don't touch people inappropriately; they don't want it. So those kinds of things. So what I'd like you to do when you get into groups, I'd like you to look people in the eye, not like this, but look people in the eye, We usually don't do that anymore because of our phones. We're walking like this all the time. So eyes, we all have eyes, let's look in them, okay? Introduce yourself and then go ahead and take down information. Maybe even talk about something else, okay? Maybe the weather, maybe just how are you doing? Like I said, it's good to get comfortable with at least one or two other people as allies in the class. Otherwise, you're gonna, by midterm, you guys are gonna kind of feel isolated, okay? Because the material's gonna get more and more and more, and you're just gonna feel like you're maybe falling down a rabbit hole if you're on your own, okay? But if you're falling down a rabbit hole, then you have an ally to keep pulling you out. So anyway, any questions about that? And I'm going to give you some time, maybe 5 to 7 minutes-ish, to do that. So again, just someone around you, okay? And if you want to just kind of turn your seats around and just introduce yourself for about 5 minutes, okay? Sound good? Okay, so go ahead.